yeah, it's a silly rule, but it's not a huge inconvenience. It's the same way we feel about drug testing, which is silly. It hasn't led to anything.
But this is what I think was the core of the problem. At that point, you fine him whatever the amount was after the first round that he didn't abide by the rules. Continue with the fine.
Players should be treated equally, and in that sense, the decision is fair. I just think the rule is unfair. I'm not going to end up in a fashion magazine, but nobody's going to say my clothes look run down or anything, right?
Sure.
No player would be punished. So that felt like a promise from the FIDE president. So after that, I no longer worried.
As the great Rusty Cole once said, time is a flat circle. I think we've done this last year as well. There's been a big drama, a big scandal, obviously including Magnus. If you haven't been living under a rock, you know what I'm talking about. He um, he wore jeans on the second day of rapid chess. After the first round, he got a warning. He got fined. I believe it's about 200 euros, and decided not to change his jeans and got forfeited for the last round of rapid chess of that day. After which he decided to call it quits, said that, this type of things should not happen in general. And obviously, it's a big discussion right now whether they should be happening or not, what the rules are and what they're not. And yeah, basically, that started the whole storm. Now, since he's returned, he will be participating in the Blitz portion that starts tomorrow. So we have a lot of ground to catch up with. Fabi, how's it going, man? What's the situation? What's your read on this whole debacle?
Yeah, I talked to a few people about it. I mean, the rules are like very clear. So if we're just talking about the rules, okay, it's very clear. Like, I think it's not. It's a kind of silly rule. Like, I think what he wore is fine. I mean, it looked fine, looked normal. And there's definitely a lot of like more formal wear, let's say, that will look worse that people have worn. Like that's at least my opinion. I know it's kind of subjective, but once the rules in place, everyone has decided that this rule, however silly, we're ready to play despite it. That's basically, I think, what all chess players think. Like, yeah, it's a silly rule, but it's not a huge inconvenience. It's the same way we feel about drug testing, which is silly. It hasn't led to anything. Chess is still not an Olympic sport, despite, I mean, I think like drug testing in chess was started in like 2008. It's been 16 years, coming on 17. Still, chess is not an Olympics. Still, we do this pointless drug testing, but we've accepted it. We've agreed to play. I play the candidates. I know I might get drug tested. Um, so that's just how it is. Like in like the strictest sense, there's not really much to discuss. Magnus was forfeited according to the rules for a game because he refused to change, and there's not really much to say. It's kind of a correct decision if you go by the rules. It's an incorrect decision to have the rules in place, and probably if you reach that stage just to avoid the scandal, because let's say one party's not willing to back down, that's Magnus, just to avoid the scandal, probably should, you know, bend the knee at that point, admit that the rule is pointless, and if players are not even willing to abide by it, then most players, yeah, they get forfeited and there's not much fuss, or they get fined and there's not much fuss. There was the thing with Anamaya Kazarian last year, a little bit of fuss. Um, I think she got fined, not forfeited. But yeah, if Magnus does it, then it could potentially become a scandal. Okay, it did, because neither side was willing to back down.
But this is what I think was the core of the problem. At that point, you fine him whatever the amount was after the first round that he didn't abide by the rules. Continue with the fine if he's going to say, look, I'm not going to go change right now. I don't want to take away whatever minutes is between each round to go and change. That's going to disrupt my concentration, etc., etc. Continue fining him for each and every round. I don't think he would have had any problems getting fined or paying the fines. and just, start with a blank slate the next day.
Sure, yeah. I think just get rid of the dress code. I understand why it's in place because people might wear dirty clothes. Actually, I think sure as a middle ground you can also just escalate the fines. You could have also started like 200 is nothing for Magnus, obviously. For
Obviously.
most, not I don't know about most, but most people wouldn't care a huge deal in this tournament, right? 200. Now, if you made the fine like here's the thing: when Magnus skipped out on a press conference at the 2016 World Championship, I think he got fined 5% of the prize fund, which or 5% of his prize, which I don't remember what their maybe it was $1 million split, but
It's a lot.
we're talking a lot of
Yes.
money. Maybe he got
Yes.
fined like 50 grand
Right.
if it was a 10% fine. I think maybe they like negotiated it down to 5%. But and the thing is, the player can't really fight back without looking pretty dumb because then you're just arguing over money and nobody's gonna have like public sympathy over like oh I'm Magnus, I have tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions, who knows, and I'm arguing over 10 grand.
Right.
Then the player doesn't really have even like a moral leg to stand on. Now, when it comes to the integrity of the tournament and forfeiting the player, then it's a different story. But the money, yeah, players probably just have to swallow that.
One thing that I don't think people sort of understood or at least took into account is that for Magnus, for you, for anybody at the top that's trying to, okay, Magnus was at that point in a pretty desperate situation from a tournament perspective if he wanted to fight for the medals.
To win, not for medals, but to win, sure.
Pretty desperate.
There were players like Jan was a slow guy, but yeah, for first definitely, and that's probably his goal in general. But for medals, I think what was he 50%? Yeah, at that point.
I think he was already +1. I want to say he was already +1, and he was fighting.
I mean, to get medals, you need
+2.
+5.
Right.
And maybe good tie breaks. To win, +5 medals. I don't know, but anyway, it's like if we're talking +5, maybe we're talking medals. I think like last year, +5 was a tie from like third till I scored +5.
Right.
It was a tie from like third till like 15th. So +6 was silver and bronze. Yeah?
Right.
And +7 was the winning score. So
he could have been +2 at the end of the day with 4 rounds to go. You can argue that if he has a very good tournament, he can score +4, +5.
It's very unlikely, but it is theoretically possible.
It's possible.
It's possible. And then maybe he plays Merzen and he beats Merzen, and we're talking about a whole different story, right?
Right.
So,
but once you get forfeited in the last round, you cannot expect him to come back in the tournament. Like I've been hearing this idea that yes, Magnus can be paired in round 10. The next day, I think Emil was talking about it. That's not going to happen. Like you forfeited him. He doesn't stand any chance for anything at this point. He's not going to come back.
But the thing is, you can't that's because Magnus doesn't care about getting a prize, which like maybe +3 gets a prize. I don't know, maybe. Actually, probably does. But you just have to consider him as another player in the tournament, and for another player in the tournament, +3 could be a very decent result, getting some money. +4 could be a very good result, getting some money. And just because it's Magnus, you can't say we're not going to forfeit him because he only cares about +5 and other people we would forfeit because they don't care too much about the forfeit or something. I don't know, whatever the argument is. Right? Players should be treated equally, and in that sense, the decision is fair. I just think the rule is unfair. But if you're going to apply it to one person, then you should apply it as a blanket rule. That's just the rules of competition should remain the same for everyone.
Yes, I agree with that. And
from a political point of view, sure, there might have been better decisions politically.
And actually, we should probably go on in that direction as well, because a lot of people were speculating that it's becoming more or less a power struggle between Magnus and FIDE, obviously with the freestyle chess tour that you're involved in as well. You will be playing.
Involved as a player. Not involved in the way that Magnus is, as kind of part of the organization, part of the initiative.
As a stakeholder.
As a player.
In the organization.
I'm a player. I like their organization. I like their tournaments. I think they're well organized. I think they have a good vision. I think it's a lot of money that they're putting into it. Obviously, all of those are big pluses. But of course, I'm not an inside person by any means.
What's your take? Do you feel like this was just an excuse to, let's say, put FIDE somewhat in a bad light and speed up the negotiations, or like stir the negotiations in a certain way? Like, what do you think the discussions are generally being handled
No, my
between
read
the
on
two
it
parties?
basically is, and I do have like some inside information. It's like my read on it is basically that um, Magnus was very frustrated coming into the tournament, and although Jean's on was probably just an honest mistake, like he just forgot, which is easy to do. Like you
Yes.
just can you're wearing like your jeans during the day, and then you just forget to change out of them into another pair of pants. Okay, whatever. Um, and then at that point, he didn't want FIDE to kind of boss him around, and it was basically like, you're not going to tell me what to do, which I also understand. I would very often feel similarly, like, this is such a trivial matter. Your rule is dumb. Why do I have to? I'll do it tomorrow. Just give me a little break. And
Find me if you want to.
yeah,
Just give me a break.
yeah, whatever.
Yes.
And if you're really going to push back, then I don't want to back down, and so on and so forth.
It became a matter of principle, as he
I don't think it was a
mentioned it.
calculated thing. I just think that it was an honest mistake, and that if it had been someone that he was, some organization, like if it was the Grand Chess Tour, and he was playing, and they probably have like totally fine or good relations, and they've always been welcome to Magnus and so on and so forth, like good good relationship, then I think he would have said, sure, I'll go change, give me some time. But just because it was FIDE and they're not in a good place, they weren't in a good place going into this, he was ready to potentially burn those bridges.
Yeah.
That's my read on it.
Yeah, and obviously that pretty much created another media storm. We tend to have this type of media storms every now and then. This feels like one of those big ones. We'll see for how long it lasts.
I think, yeah, I mean,
it doesn't seem to be
like it
speeding
kind of
up.
like reached pretty far, right? Elon, there was some mainstream articles
like
here and there.
CNN was all over the place, more or less.
But like the conclusion is so anticlimactic that it's probably just fizzles, and that's like, it was a big story for a day.
Yeah.
Kind of big story in the chess world. Probably people like the media just likes it. It's like, oh, genes. They always want chess to be some, some sort of interest story that people can understand. No, it's not about like, oh, this is the youngest world champion ever or whatever. But the best player in the world is fined for wearing jeans.
Yeah.
Like what? Just like they totally latch onto the Hunt thing because, guy is accused, and then there's some angle that we can with sex toys that we can write about, and guys accused of cheating in the chess world, and this and that. Yeah, they're just looking for the juicy story, right? So
of course,
it's not
yes.
chess related.
Sure. No, obviously it's an interesting discussion, and I do believe that it does have its place within the dialogue, because I do believe that we should be not wearing ripped jeans and t-shirts at the World Championship at the Cipriani. It's a nice venue. Look,
but it depends.
We should be having some uniforms.
We can wear like really nice t-shirts. That like really nice t-shirts exist.
Sure.
Really nice, even ripped jeans exist, and really shitty looking suits exist.
That's true.
And people can also wear something that is totally by the letter of the law, and it's like 3 sizes too big and looks like a clown suit.
There needs to be some middle ground, though.
Yeah, how do you do it?
Well, think about it this way. In tennis, and I've seen this comparison quite a few times. In tennis, at the Wimbledon, everybody has to wear white. The players have to wear white. Everything has to be white. Your shoes cannot be any other color. Your underwear cannot be any other color. I think this was a point of discussion at some point. Like, how do we implement? And nobody's complaining. Like, everybody's wearing white.
On the other
how
hand,
do we implement that?
That's not a huge open event like this. To the same extent,
there's less players. Yes,
and,
probably. Actually, I'm not sure what.
And
the
there's
number
qualifiers.
is.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, maybe that's not an argument. But also the prizes are enormous. I mean, a lot of people here make zero money or lose money.
Sure.
I mean, you can't.
But I would say probably at the Wimbledon is somewhat similar outside of the top. Like, most likely people that come in and place last, they will not get anything.
I mean, yeah, if you don't qualify, I guess. Yeah.
And even if you do, probably just okay, sure. The money aspect is most likely not comparable. Like you're gonna make much more money at the Wimbledon, but still,
No, I agree. I mean, yeah, maybe.
you see the
Thing is,
point,
I
right?
don't really mind too much. I feel like I can wear things that are not jeans, but I also think that jeans can look nice. I mean, I don't mind, not wearing sneakers, but I do think sneakers can look nice. Like with the outfit I'm wearing now, I think if I went to a tournament hall, there's nothing wrong with it.
Sure.
It's not, I'm not going to end up in a fashion magazine, but nobody's going to say my clothes look run down or anything, right?
Sure.
They look normal.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, and I could also, I mean, will like FIDE be willing to implement a very strict dress code? Like you can only wear a certain type, but we're willing to fund that for the players and get you fitted and make it look good?
Hmm.
That's another
That's not
question.
going to happen with 200 players.
Probably not. It's
It's not
also
going to
not
happen.
realistic. Yeah.
Not realistic. Yes.
I don't know. I'm okay with not having a dress code. I also think that a lot of the like the thing is, tennis is also so visual.
It is.
Like you're only looking at the players. Chess, mostly you're looking at. I mean, if you look at the chess broadcast, it's mostly you look at the commentators with the board. You sometimes will see the live area, but very often it's just commentators with the board. And this is pretty much the only sport that I can think of where you actually look at the commentators.
Hmm.
There's like what
That's
else?
true.
What else?
That is true. Yes.
It's-
And
I
I
actually-
think that should be limited. Just
Yeah,
as
I think we could like make the commentators
parenthesis,
a bit
yes.
less, not to go against commentators, but if you watch any like esport, for example, any game, you'll see mostly the screen of what they're playing.
Mhm.
Then you'll see the player cams.
Mhm.
Maybe they're in the same room, but probably they're in the same room, right? And then the commentators, you just hear their voices.
Directionally, this is where I think we should be headed.
It is a bit unusual to have the commentators as the centerpiece, but if that's the way it is, then why does it matter what kind of shoes I'm wearing? Because nobody ever sees my shoes. Like literally, just a question for our audience: has anyone seen what shoes I've worn during any of the rounds of the Rapid? What color were they? Like maybe you could find some photos, but during the broadcast, did anyone see my
You
shoe?
cannot see shoes. By the
Right?
way,
So why does it matter?
You were having a very nice jacket.
Thanks.
I have to say, you were probably the most presentable out of everybody. Outfit of the day.
Not
Maybe
sure,
we
but
can.
thank you. But
We
I'm not
can do
sure.
that. No, I honestly think you were. It was a very nice red jacket or whatever color that was, brick, however you want to call it. But yeah, it was nice. Cool. So that basically escalated. He quit. Everything was going in the wrong way. We thought that he's not. He said that basically he's going on vacation. He decided to come back after some discussions with FIDE. I believe he mentioned he spoke with Anand, but what changed his tune seems to have been discussion with the president, Arkady Dvorkovich.
Well,
What happened?
my
What happened there?
experience with Arkady generally is that, like, he's very open to, kind of accommodating players. That's my experience. Now, it's not always the case that the words turn into actual concrete things, but for the most part, I felt like he wants to accommodate players, which probably is why Magnus spoke kindly of him in general, and they were maybe able to find an agreement. And also, I'm sure that Magnus and Vichy have a pretty good relationship in general, and player relationship is mostly respectful. My assumption at least. So my other assumption is that FIDE probably like more or less agreed to whatever demands Magnus had.
Yeah,
Whatever that was.
that's a hot take right there. Now, before we end this short episode, congratulations, you made the candidates.
Thanks.
Nice. Qualified, not by winning the Rapid, by Arjun not winning it.
Not by getting second or third or anything else. Yeah, but of course. No, I mean Arjun played well.
He did. Yeah.
Overall, he didn't have like the greatest. It was a bit of a shaky finish. Otherwise, he could have fought for first for sure. He was definitely up there fighting. I was nervous. I can't lie. At some point, it was out of my hands. I wasn't fighting for top places. Like after 10 rounds for sure. After 9 rounds, pretty much. I mean, it still had some like outside hope. After 10 rounds for sure, because I drew the 10th round and that was basically it. Like even theoretical chances were gone. After 9 rounds, I could theoretically win the rest of my games. Can happen. Didn't happen. Still, my last 2 games were actually good quality overall. So that's a small. I mean, +4. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's losing rating. It's definitely underperforming. But if you're not in good form, then I guess it's not terrible.
Thoughts on the podium? Murzin, gold, 18 years of age. We have 2 18-year-old world champions right now. Grishuk coming back, not out of retirement, but we've known his class for a very long time, especially in the short time controls. Podium completed with Jan. Is the Russian chess school back?
I don't know what's Russian chess. Look, I mean, Murzin, he beat me in the second round, so he is a very, very good player.
He's a very classical player, yeah.
Obviously, that much was obvious. That he won the World Rapid Championship, of course, was a surprise. I would say similar to like when Noterbeck won. Similar surprise. It's not impossible, but for sure a surprise. But +7, you can't say it's undeserved by any means. There was a very critical game against Prague and Nanta. That was basically a turning point.
Yeah.
Prague could have become world champion if he had won that game, but Murzin won from a losing position. He tricked him, and yeah, that's good for him. Congratulations. And Grishuk, I'm not surprised. When he played Arjun in, I think it was round 10. Yeah, round 10, I think. 10, well, yeah. I said to someone, like, this is a dangerous opponent for Arjun. I was kind of happy with the pairing. I thought that it could easily go wrong for Arjun. It did go wrong. That was kind of the crucial moment for me in terms of Arjun not winning. So I'm not surprised because even though he's not playing at his best these days, still he's always capable of a result like this. Jan, obviously not a surprise. Same score as Grishuk, 9.5 out of 13. Jan played well in the Champions Chess Tour, so not a surprise. He did start slow, but at some point he didn't lose any games, so he drew a game, won a game, and so on and so forth, and eventually he picked up +6, which is obviously a very good score. That's like the tied for first in 2021, when it was Noterbeck, Jan, Magnus, myself. We all tied with 9.5 points. 9.5 was what I got in 2022. Got 3rd place. 9 was what I got last year, so I'm slowly going down. Yeah, it's my worst rapid result in a while. But I also felt like it was just a tougher tournament. Like last year, I just kind of felt like I played easier players. Maybe everyone's gotten a bit stronger. So
it was such a strong event.
Like I didn't have any feeling that any of my rounds were easy. Maybe the first round was relatively not too difficult. I played like maybe 4 games that I'm reasonably happy with out of 13. So a lot of games that I'm reasonably disgusted with. But yeah, Murzin, that's a great result for him.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to say like one thing, because there was this whole like freestyle like threat, were players threatened or not. I mean, like when I was told, I wouldn't say that I was threatened. I didn't use any words like this, but I was told, like, this is just, I'm not going to use any fancy adjectives, but I was told very specifically after there was this like announcement by Freestyle that they would have the World Championship next year, Freestyle World Championship, that I am legally not allowed to play in anything called World Chess Championship by a contract that I signed for candidates in the past. So, okay, I was told that. Now, I mean, you can call it a threat or not. I don't know what you want to call it. But basically, I don't know if you'd call it a threat because, yes, this is something I've signed in the past. On the other hand, like, I'm not involved in the organization, so why tell me? Why not tell the organizer? And then they can relay that information to me. Or I don't know exactly how it should work. But there was this, like, kind of communication going on between all these parties. And at some point probably became rather hostile.
Yeah.
Not towards players, but between the parties that were, I mean, FIDE and Freestyle, probably became hostile because obviously it turned very ugly. And at some point I was told very specifically, like closer to this tournament, that no player would be punished, and I can be assured of that. In regards to any decision I would make. Now, it was.
Does that include you playing in a World Championship title event?
It was a vague statement. It doesn't include everything, so I don't know. But it felt like a promise. It was from Arkady. It felt like a promise that, whatever we decide in terms of freestyle, because it was maybe not directly referring to it, but obviously it could have only been referring to that. That no player would be punished. So that felt like a promise from the FIDE president. So after that, I no longer worried, and I mean, I told everyone like I'm not going to be in the middle of this. Um, I can tell the other party that, this is FIDE's position. uh, I can tell Freestyle that this is FIDE's position about the players, but I'm not going to get in the middle of it too much. Uh, but again, that's exactly how it happened. So, to call it threats or not threats, I don't know, but that's how it went on.
Yeah, very interesting. A bit murky with the timeline. A ping pong between threats, no threats, assurances, and
No, the timeline's
whatnot.
not murky. That one I can tell you exactly. On November 23rd,
Oh, okay.
I was told this that
I'm
legally.
That was the initial threat. So, or like the legal
Okay, whatever you want to call it.
repercussions.
I mean,
Yeah.
not even like just telling me basically you can't participate in a world championship
This is what you
by your
signed.
contract.
This is what you signed.
Then
Yes.
I told Freestyle like, okay, this is basically, what I'm being told. Now I don't know exactly what Freestyle is going to be called or not, and you can speak to FIDE or not, but this is what I'm told. So
This is in your hands right now.
then
You need to
they
sort it out.
talked between themselves, and then Magnus and Hikaru at some point, I believe, gave an ultimatum. Probably like a week before this tournament. Like I basically like left it alone, and then at some point I needed to kind of understand if I'm playing in February or not. So I reached out to people at Freestyle, Jan and someone else, and I said, okay, has this been resolved, just so I know. And then the kind of talk started again, and then eventually I think Hikaru and Magnus gave their ultimatum about participating in this event, and then I was told, and I assume other players were given this assurance that, no player will be punished, which was reassuring. Then I basically made my kind of plan that, okay, I'm going to be playing in Weisenhaus in February.
That's schedule.
That's just for my scheduling reasons. I want to play, of course, but just so I know that I can play. And then we came here, and everything seemed fine, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I'm sure time will clear things out even more. For now, that was it from us from New York. Tomorrow, Blitz. Watch it wherever you're watching it and support us. Hopefully, we'll see you on the 31st as well. In the last
hopefully.
date.
Hopefully.
Maybe myself as well. Who knows? Cheers. Don't let me hang it.